I'm Lauren Pierce. I'm 32. And tonight was the night they thought I was just the family disappointment. Again. We were at the Bluebird, the most exclusive new restaurant in Chicago. Crystal chandeliers, velvet booths, white tablecloths that probably cost more than my parents' car payment. It was my brother Ethan's engagement dinner. He was glowing. My parents were beaming. And me? I was seated next to the cousin they always forget to invite to things. Across the room, I could see Ethan laughing with his fiancée's family. My mother gave me one quick glance, just long enough to nod at my outfit, then look away with polite disapproval. Lauren, she had said earlier, eyeing my sleek black dress that I'd had custom, tailored from a boutique downtown. Let's find you something a little more mature before the dinner. That college campus look is charming, but not for events like this. I wanted to laugh. The dress alone cost more than most of their wardrobe combined. But why bother explaining? To them, I was still the kid wasting her time in computer land. Ethan's fiancée, Madison, was poised, elegant, and polite. She smiled at me kindly when we were introduced, clearly coached on how to interact with the underachieving sister. "So you're in tech support?" she asked gently, her head tilted like I might break. "Something like that," I said with a small smile. I could feel it all over again, the sting. That same knot in my stomach I used to get at the dinner table growing up, when Dad would ask Ethan about his pre-med classes, and then glance at me and say, "Still playing with those websites, Lauren?" Except tonight wasn't just another dinner. Tonight was the night everything changed. They just didn't know it yet. Because sitting 2 chairs down from me was the Director of Strategic Acquisitions for Horizon Health Technologies, the same company currently negotiating a $215 million acquisition deal with my company. My company. They didn't know. Madison didn't know. Ethan didn't know. My parents definitely didn't know, and I wasn't about to be the one to tell them. Not yet. You see, they'd spent years writing me off. Years of holiday dinners where they asked if I was still trying that tech thing. Of voicemail reminders that Ethan could help me get a real job at the hospital. Of subtle jabs about how proud they were of one child, while gently ignoring the other. But tonight I was done pretending. Madison raised her glass as her father gave a glowing toast about a union of 2 high-achieving families. My father's speech followed. It was the usual. To Ethan, the pride of our lives. And to Madison, a woman of excellence and ambition. "We're so honored to welcome you." The words felt like fine-cut glass. Precise. Shiny. Sharp. No mention of me. No recognition. Not even a nod. I was invisible at my own brother's celebration. And yet, all I could think about was what Madison's face would look like when she realized I was the founder of the company her firm was trying to buy. I felt a flicker of something between defiance and grief. Is this how it always ends? I wondered. You do everything right, but if it's not in the language your family speaks, it doesn't count? My hand brushed over the linen napkin on my lap, grounding myself. I didn't need their recognition anymore. I had already built everything I ever dreamed of quietly, fiercely, and on my own terms. But still, something inside me wanted that one moment. Not to be applauded, not even to be praised, just to be seen. Madison leaned over during the appetizer course, wine glass in hand, and asked me, "Do you have plans to move into something more permanent soon? My firm is hiring entry-level devs. I could recommend you if you'd like. We love working with women looking for a foot in the door." Her tone was gentle. She meant well. And I felt my heart bang against my ribs. I looked her dead in the eyes, smiled, and said, "That's a generous offer, thank you." Because the time wasn't right. Not yet. But it was coming. And when the moment landed, it wouldn't be loud. It would be undeniable. To understand why that dinner at Bluebird cut so deep, you'd have to know where I came from. Highland Oaks was the kind of suburb that looked like it had been cut out of a magazine. Manicured lawns, neighborhood committees, Ivy League bumper stickers. And my family? We were the cover stars. My father, Dr. Raymond Pierce, was the neurosurgeon specialists called when things got complicated. My mother, Cynthia Pierce, was a corporate lawyer with a perfect record and a reputation for slicing through courtroom arguments like a scalpel. And then there was my older brother, Ethan. 4 years ahead, straight A student, debate team captain, future doctor, parental pride incarnate. Me? I liked computers. Not fancy degrees. Not structured extracurriculars. Just building things. Coding, designing. Tinkering with systems no one else cared about. When I was 15, I taught myself HTML and CSS over a weekend. I was ecstatic. At dinner, I told my family I'd built my first website. My mom gave a tight smile. That's sweet, honey. But shouldn't you be prepping for your SAT verbal section? Real colleges care about track records, not hobbies. Dad nodded, already turning to ask Ethan about his shadowing hours at the hospital. That was the moment. The first real fracture. After that, I learned to keep things to myself. My bedroom became a hidden universe printouts of code instead of award certificates, sketches of app interfaces in place of motivational posters. I'd stay up late reading about Python and JavaScript while everyone else in the house slept peacefully, confident in the real child's achievements. When I was 16, I created a simple event planning program for my school's charity fundraiser. It cut planning time in half. The event coordinator, Miss Winters, raved to my parents at a school assembly. "She's got a gift," she told them. "Oh, Lauren has many interests," my mother replied, all diplomacy. "But we're keeping her focused on law prep." I wasn't even planning to apply to law school. They had already planned my future for me. I was just the placeholder until the real plan kicked in. The final straw came junior year. I had spent months building an inventory management tool for a regional high school coding competition. I made it to the finals. But the finals landed on the same day as Ethan's acceptance celebration to Stanford Med. "We're sorry, sweetie," my mom had said, placing a hand on my shoulder like a judge handing down a sentence. "But your brother's worked his whole life for this. Maybe next year?" I went alone. No banners, no cheering section. Just me and my laptop. And I won. First place. Judges called my app commercial grade. They said I had vision beyond my years. I came home holding a trophy almost as tall as Meadow Fine, the entire house celebrating Ethan. My dad barely looked up. "That's wonderful, dear," he said, raising a glass. To my brother. That night, I stared at the ceiling in my dark room and made myself a promise. I would never beg for their validation again. I would succeed so undeniably that they couldn't ignore me no matter how hard they tried. Senior year, the pressure began. My parents had planned for me to apply to Yale, Princeton, Georgetown, anywhere with a prestigious pre-law program. Instead, I applied to tech-heavy schools. Computer science departments that no one in my family had even heard of. When I got into Illinois Tech with a full merit scholarship, you'd think I had announced plans to join the circus. "You're wasting your potential," my dad said, voice taut with disappointment. "You could be so much more," my mom added, as if computer science was a soft landing for people without ambition. Ethan tried to be the peacemaker. "Maybe it's just a phase," he said with a sympathetic shrug. "She'll come around." I didn't come around. When I left for college, I carried 2 bags, one filled with clothes and the other filled with spite-fueled determination. And yet, underneath it all, I still hoped they'd one day see what I saw in myself. Illinois Tech was everything I needed. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who didn't just tolerate my interests, they celebrated them. And that's where I met her. Samantha. Sharp. Scrappy. Wickedly brilliant. We met in an advanced programming class and bonded over our mutual frustration that healthcare technology was still operating like it was 1997. Her mom had been misdiagnosed multiple times before finally getting the right care. "Doctors can work miracles," she told me one night, "but the systems they use are garbage." That was the beginning. Sitting in a tiny coffee shop at midnight, we sketched what would become the foundation of our company, Next Bridge. A platform that would streamline medical communication between providers and patients. Something designed not just for functionality, but for clarity, for humanity. By the time sophomore year ended, we had a working prototype. By junior year, we were winning startup competitions and scraping together enough prize money to file our first patent. But my family still believed I was doing its support somewhere part-time. I didn't correct them. It hurt too much to explain something they had never cared to understand. Back home on break, I'd sit through family barbecues where uncles asked if I'd finally grown out of the tech thing. My parents casually mentioned they were still hoping I'd go to law school once I got it out of my system. What they didn't know, we had just signed our first hospital partnership. That summer, we moved into a garage studio living on microwave noodles and sheer willpower. And I kept every detail hidden. Because part of me still wanted that dramatic moment. That reveal. That second when the people who once looked through me finally saw me. The garage wasn't glamorous. It smelled faintly of motor oil and stale pizza. In winter, we froze. In summer, we melted. But to me and Samantha, it was sacred ground. It was where we were building something that might change the world. We called it Next Bridge. Our mission was simple. Make medical communication human again. Easier. Faster. Smarter. Hospitals were drowning in outdated software, disconnected systems, and fragmented patient histories. We knew that if we could fix the way information flowed, we could save lives, not just time. But saving lives didn't pay rent. We were broke. Samantha and I took on every side gig imaginable. We designed websites for small bakeries. We fixed broken e-commerce pages for car dealerships. I even spent 2 weekends cleaning up a local dentist CRM just to scrape together enough to buy servers. We slept an average of 3 hours a night. We coded until our eyes blurred, then refactored until our wrists ached. We lived on ramen noodles, bulk coffee, and hope. And still, my parents thought I was between jobs. I stopped correcting them. What was the point? They didn't want to understand. To them, I was still playing with toys. A child with stubbornness instead of ambition. A girl who could have been a lawyer but chose to tinker with gadgets. It wasn't just the financial strain that made those years hard. It was the silence. The absolute absence of belief. We pitched to dozens of angel investors. Most said no. Some laughed. One asked, "Are you girls even old enough to be here?" But one night, after a pitch competition in Evanston, a quiet, older woman approached us. She introduced herself as Dr. Lillian Cheng, a hospital administrator from Boston General. She didn't smile much, but she listened. "You're solving the wrong problem," she said. We blinked. "Excuse me? You're trying to sell a tool to hospitals. You need to prove it saves money." She was right. From that day on, we shifted our pitch. We weren't just improving patient outcomes, we were cutting costs by reducing redundant testing and improving discharge speed. Dr. Cheng became our first real client. She offered us a pilot program. It wasn't much, but it was something. We used the case study results from her hospital to land another client, then another. By the time we turned 25, we had 10 hospital systems in beta and 3 full-time employees plus one brilliant intern named Theo, who slept under his desk more than once and never complained. But I was still hiding. To the outside world, especially to my family, I was invisible. At Thanksgiving, my father pulled me aside by the dessert table. "Lauren," he said, "we've been talking with Ethan. He says you're still looking for direction." I swallowed hard. We were thinking, maybe Ethan could help get you a job in his hospital's admin department. Something stable. Until you figure things out. He said it with kindness. But it crushed me just the same. "I'm starting a business, Dad." He chuckled, not cruelly, but dismissively. "That's not a real job, sweetheart. You need structure. Experience. You can't build something out of nothing." But that's exactly what I was doing. That was the last time I tried to talk to them about work. After that, I kept it surface level. "Work is fine." "Yeah, still in tech." "No, not married yet." Meanwhile, we were on fire. Our platform began attracting media attention, small articles at first. Then a write-up in Healthcare Today. Investors started calling us instead of the other way around. At 26, we raised our first major round, $5 million in seed funding from Sierra Ventures. We moved out of the garage and into a sleek co-working space downtown. I bought a decent used car to replace the one that died in the middle of a snowstorm. I even upgraded my wardrobe, finally swapping hoodies for tailored blazers, not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I'd earned it. Samantha and I split responsibilities. He handled operations and HR, I handled product and strategy. We built a team, a culture, a mission. And most importantly, we built trust with our clients. Still, when Christmas rolled around and I returned home, I let them believe I was still figuring it out. It was easier that way. Because deep down, I still wasn't ready. Not for the reveal. Not for the inevitable moment when they'd try to rewrite history. I didn't want their recognition if it came with strings. I didn't want a half-hearted, "we always believed in you," or "we're so proud now." I wanted success on my terms. But even that silence took a toll. Some nights, I'd come home to my apartment, collapse on the couch, and wonder what would it feel like to be seen. Really seen. Not by clients. Not by venture capitalists. But by the people who were supposed to know you best? I talked it through with my therapist, Dr. Winters. "Why haven't you told them?" she asked one afternoon. "Because I'm scared they'll take credit," I whispered. Or worse, still find a way to call it a mistake. She nodded slowly. "So you're waiting for the day it becomes undeniable?" "Yes." "And what happens if that day comes, and they still don't understand?" That one stung. But it stayed with me. By 27, NextBridge was in over 100 hospitals. User satisfaction was sky high. Medical journals were citing our case studies. And then, Horizon Health Technologies called. A meeting. A proposal. They wanted to talk partnership. Then they started using words like acquisition. Then numbers like $200 million. Samantha and I sat across from men twice our age who used words like synergy and strategic integration. They thought they were teaching us something. But we had built this. Brick by brick. Line by line. Night by sleepless night. We didn't need their approval. Just the right deal. And as those talks escalated, emails, negotiations, paperwork, and unexpected detail popped up. Horizon's director of strategic acquisitions was someone named Madison Lewis. I thought nothing of it. Until my brother called to invite me to his engagement dinner. To Madison Lewis. The same woman negotiating to buy my company. Was marrying my brother. The night of the engagement dinner, I stood in front of my closet, staring at a line of perfectly curated outfits. I had my choice of designer gowns, thanks to the quiet millions sitting in my investment accounts. But I didn't want a costume. I didn't want a peacock in front of the people who once told me my field was a phase. I wanted to be myself, undeniably, unshakably myself. I chose a simple black sheath dress. Elegant, subtle, powerful. Just like what I had built. The Bluebird was every bit as polished as my mother had promised. Floor-to-ceiling windows shimmered against the lights of the Chicago River. Waitstaff in tuxedos moved like dancers. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. My parents hovered near the front table, orchestrating everything like generals at a gala. I arrived right on time. Not early, not fashionably late, just present. "Lauren," Ethan called, arms outstretched. "You made it." He introduced me to Madison again, this time formally. She looked lovely in deep burgundy, her eyes warm, her voice gracious. "It's great to see you again," she said with a smile. "You clean up nicely." My mother was at my elbow in seconds. "See?" she whispered. "I told you shopping would help." I said nothing. I was placed far from the couple, near distant relatives and someone's +1. Strategic seating. Out of the way. Fine. The first champagne toast was predictable. My father raised his glass with that proud, performative tone he always used in public. To Ethan, our golden boy. And to Madison, a woman of strength, brilliance, and ambition, just like the women in our family should be. The sting of that last part landed like a slap. My mother followed with a speech about how Madison was a perfect fit for our family of high achievers. I stared into my glass, letting the bubbles rise and pop, one by one. Then came the appetizers. I answered a few polite questions about how the job hunt was going. My cousin's husband asked if I was still doing freelance tech stuff. I smiled tightly. Still working in health technology, I said. Oh, like wearable fitness trackers? Not exactly, I replied. More clinical. He nodded like he understood. He didn't. Across the table, Madison kept looking at me. A slight furrow in her brow. She was trying to place something. Match a face to a name. Sorry. She finally said during a lull in conversation. Can I ask, what's your last name again? Pierce, I said. Her fork paused midair. Lauren Pierce? She asked slowly. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, she's my sister. The one who still lives on bagels and Mountain Dew. But Madison wasn't laughing. Her eyes were wide now. She blinked twice, mouth slightly open. Lauren Pierce, she repeated, more to herself. Wait, are you the Lauren Pierce from Nextbridge? The table fell silent. Ethan frowned. Madison, that's not my sister's in IT or something. No, Madison said, shaking her head slowly. No, Ethan. Your sister is the founder. The Lauren Pierce. She's the one we've been negotiating with. Your sister is the CEO of Nextbridge, the platform my team is trying to acquire for $215 million. Utter silence. My father's glass froze halfway to his lips. My mother blinked like someone had slapped her awake from a dream. Ethan's jaw literally dropped. I didn't flinch. I looked straight at Madison and said, calmly, yes, that's me. The silence cracked into whispers. Forks clinked. Someone dropped a napkin. My aunt mouthed, what? You never told us, my mother finally breathed. You never said why wouldn't you, why didn't you? Madison filled in for me, her voice now shifting into full business mode. Nextbridge is one of the most promising medical communication platforms in the country. We've been chasing them for 2 years. Hospitals are cutting communication errors by almost 40% using their interface. She turned back to me. You've been flying under the radar on purpose, haven't you? I smiled. Helps keep things clean. My father cleared his throat. Lauren, is this true? I nodded. I started Nextbridge with my co-founder 6 years ago. We now serve over 300 healthcare facilities nationwide, and yes, Horizon's offer is under review. No apology. No flourish. Just facts. The room swirled in disbelief. Cousins who'd once asked if I needed resume help now asked about equity stakes. My uncle leaned in with questions about IPOs. My mother stammered out a dazed, I always knew you had that spark. But Ethan? Ethan just stared. Like he'd been hit with a brick of truth that didn't fit his version of reality. I thought, he began, then stopped. I thought you were struggling. I was, I said softly. Just not in the way you assumed. After dessert, Madison pulled me aside, her voice hushed but sincere. I had no idea, she said. If I'd known, I would've. No worries, I replied. No hard feelings. You're a legend in our department, she admitted, laughing. They call you the ghost genius. I like it quiet, I said. She hesitated. Ethan's not taking it well, but I think he'll come around. I didn't answer. Because it wasn't about Ethan. It was about me finally choosing not to perform for people who had never cared to understand. As I left the restaurant, my phone buzzed. Mom. Brunch tomorrow? The Drake Hotel at 11. We need to talk. I stared at the message. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel dread, I felt calm. Whatever they had to say, I was ready. Because this time, I wasn't the girl begging to be seen. I was the woman who had already built an empire. The next morning, I arrived at the Drake Hotel 10 minutes early. The dining room was serene white tablecloths, brass chandeliers, and the low hum of silverware against fine china. It was the kind of place my parents loved. comfortable, predictable, controlled. They were already seated when I walked in. My mother stood quickly. "Darling," she said, her voice a bit too high. "You look wonderful." My father stood too, stiffly, like he wasn't sure if a handshake or a hug was appropriate. He settled for an awkward half-embrace. "You're early." "I'm always early," I replied, sliding into my seat. "You just never noticed." Silence. Then coffee arrived mercifully. My mother sipped hers, then leaned forward with a bright, forced smile. "We've been reading about your company this morning," she began. "The articles are impressive. The scale, the funding rounds, the awards truly incredible." I nodded. "Thank you. But why keep it a secret from us?" My father asked, confusion in his voice. "Why not share something so monumental?" I took a deep breath. "Because for years, you made it very clear that what I loved didn't matter." "That's not fair," my mother jumped in. "We always supported you." "No," I said gently but firmly. "You supported the version of me that looked like Ethan. That followed your path. When I chose something different, you called it a phase. You mocked it. You dismissed it." My father shifted in his seat. "We just wanted what was best for you." "No," I said again. "You wanted what was familiar. What you could understand. You didn't ask about my work. You didn't try. You assumed the worst and spoke it out loud." There was a long pause. Then my mother said quietly, "I suppose we did. I didn't hide it to punish you," I added. "I hid it because I wanted something that couldn't be diminished. I needed to build something that stood even if no one applauded." They looked at me in silence. Then my father said the words I never expected to hear. "I was wrong." I blinked. "What?" "I was wrong," he repeated. "I didn't get it. I thought you were drifting. I see now you were focused. More focused than any of us." He looked down, then back up. "And I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't cinematic. But it was real." My mother's eyes welled slightly. "We were afraid for you, Lauren. The tech world is volatile. We thought you were setting yourself up for heartbreak." "I get that," I said. "But love without respect is not love. Not fully." They nodded. Slowly. Quietly. We finished brunch with awkward small talk and nervous laughter. Plans were tentative ones. A family dinner. A tour of my office. Small, cautious steps. But something had shifted. Later that week, Ethan showed up at my apartment. No announcement, no ego. Just a bottle of wine and a sheepish expression. "I figured, you might need a drink," he said, holding up a surprisingly good Cabernet. I let him in. He looked around, eyebrows rising. "So this is what tech support pays for these days?" I smiled. "Something like that." We sat in the living room, city lights stretching beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I'm sorry," he said after a while. "Not just for the dinner. For everything. For thinking I had it figured out while you were just lost." I looked at him carefully. "You weren't trying to be cruel, but you were blind." He nodded. "Totally. I was busy being the golden child. Never thought to ask what you were building." We talked for hours. About medicine. About software. About family. About what it means to carry expectations like armor and what it means to finally take it off. In the months that followed, things didn't magically become perfect. But they became possible. My parents came to tour the Next Bridge headquarters. My mother wore her courtroom heels and tried not to act overwhelmed. My father asked genuine questions about product architecture. It was awkward, it was messy, but it was real. And Madison? She became a friend. She and I started working closely after the Horizon acquisition closed. We collaborated across departments, brainstormed feature expansions, laughed about the absurdity of how it all unfolded. "You know," she said one afternoon as we walked to grab coffee, "Ethan's still trying to figure out if he's impressed or threatened." "He'll be fine," I said with a smile. "He married well." We both laughed. Through it all, I learned something essential. You don't need to punish the people who didn't see your worth. You just need to know it for yourself. Forgiveness wasn't about letting them off the hook. It was about letting myself move forward without dragging the weight of their judgment behind me. Some relatives still treat me like the girl who got lucky. Others now call asking for investment advice. I don't correct them. I don't engage. I just keep building. I now mentor young women in STEM. Host monthly workshops for high school girls who dream of code instead of courtrooms. I want to build something that matters, one said last week. You already are, I told her. Even if they don't get it yet. Because they will. And even if they don't, you will. That's enough. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been underestimated because your dream didn't fit their blueprint? Have you ever had to build in silence, waiting for the moment they couldn't ignore you anymore? If so, you're not alone. And maybe it's time you stop waiting for them to see you and start seeing yourself. Because you don't need to prove them wrong. You just need to prove you were right to believe in you.